Set. The next speaker in our summer series is Marc. This past January, Marc retired from a near 50-year career working with computer software as a programmer, instructor, technical writer, and quality assurance engineer. His academic background is in music history, medieval studies, and education. He and his wife Naomi joined Temple Emunah in the 1990s and recently rejoined after being away for a few years. Marc has been the accompanist of the Makela and also of the Barbecue and Baruchu for many years, in addition to playing the piano at house concerts in the Boston area. At Emunah, along with reading Torah, he has the job of finding readers for all services, and this year he took over coordinating the summer speakers program. And his topic today is Shabbat Nachamu.
I'm new at this, excuse me. I've got to turn this thing on now. Hello. Can you hear me? Is this doing anything? No? How about this? Bring these guys closer. Can you hear me now? Toda rabba. Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Shalom Aleichem. Good Shabbos. Okay, today is Shabbat Nachamu. What is that all about? Well, I can thank David for telling us what it's about, so I don't have to read my first paragraph. That's very good. We talked about the Haftorah of consolation, so I will just go on a little bit further. The reason it's called that is the beginning of the Haftorah, the words Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, which I learned because for some reason I didn't grow up with Jewish translations. I learned it as comfort ye, my people, from the King James Bible or probably from Handel's Messiah. So I think of it that way. Okay, there are many paths that the Jewish people have taken for consolation. One is poetry and song, such as today's Haftorah, or Psalm 137, by the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. Another is fantasies of revenge. For this, we have the Book of Esther and the whole holiday of Purim. The conflict between Mordecai and Haman represents the ultimate triumph of good over evil. We have the insane Nebuchadnezzar eating grass. We have Yael driving a tent peg into the head of Sisera, and Judith lopping off Holofernes' head with a sword. Very satisfying stories, all of these. Or simply, after all our suffering, we're still here. They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. The form of consolation I bring you today is humor. Whatever happens, we can always laugh. I'm going to tell you a story about Shabbat Nachamu. The name of the story is, surprisingly, Shabbat Nachamu. I'm up here today to tell you this story for a number of reasons. First of all, this was, as you now know, with a vengeance, my bar mitzvah portion. On this Hebrew date, many years ago, I did what a lot of Jewish boys in my community, or at least my Hebrew school, did. I led the services, read the Maftir and the Haftorah, and made a speech. My father wrote the speech. I read it. I didn't understand it. It's been a long time, but for a couple of years now, I've wanted to read this Haftorah again. And this time, I get to write my own speech. The second reason I'm speaking today is quite simply that Terry, thank you so much, asked me to take over her job of finding and coordinating guest speakers and service leaders for the summer. At first, I didn't find a lot of volunteers, and it's easier to do something than to get someone else to do it. That said, I finally did find people to lead and to speak, and I'd like to thank them all for doing a great job in making the summer speaker series a success. I don't have time to read all the names, but everybody who was involved as service leaders, as speakers, and as the people who publicized, who printed out handouts, who did everything to make it possible to record it. Thank you all. Yes. Now, as for the story of Shabbat Nachamu, I found it in a footnote in a book by Sasha Senderovich, who is, as some of you may know, the son-in-law of Wendy and Bob Russman Halpern. So there is an Emunah connection there. The book is called How the Soviet Jew Was Made. And it's about what the concept Soviet Jew came to mean in the early days of the USSR. The author brings this out by analyzing fiction and films from the 20s and 30s about Jews and by Jews in the Soviet Union, in English, or not in, God no, sorry, in Yiddish and in Russian. In one chapter, Senderovich discusses the idea of the Jew as trickster. A Jew isn't quite a normal human being. There's always something a little bit odd about him in the Soviet imagination. And so the trickster figure is one way of elucidating that. The text for this chapter is a Russian short story called Shabbat Nachamu by the Russian Jewish writer Isaac Babel. Babel calls his story part one of the Herschel cycle, although he never wrote another one, which is kind of funny in itself, I suppose. Senderovich says this story is based on a Yiddish original, for which he provides a footnote. And finally, it just so happens that soon after I read this book, I took a class in reading and translating Yiddish. And as a final assignment, everyone was asked to find and translate some work, a story, a poem, a political speech, anything from Yiddish. So, of course, I had Shabbos Nachmu to work on. There was only one problem. I didn't know where to find the book that simply appeared in a footnote in a chapter of a book on a vaguely related subject. The book containing this story was not easy to find. There are two sources we all go to. One is the Yiddish Book Center in Amherst. Didn't have it. The other is the YIVO, Center for Jewish Studies in New York. They didn't have it. So I had to look around. Turns out there was a copy at the University of Wisconsin in microfiche. Well, my son just happens to teach at the University of Wisconsin, so I thought he might be helpful here. But no, he doesn't know Yiddish, couldn't even read the footnote, and probably doesn't know what microfiche is. It's some tiny little thing. Maybe a little smaller than a gefilte fiche. So what's a Jew to do? I wrote to Sasha Senderovich, who said, sure, here it is. And he sent me a PDF of the whole book. Great. So the book, which now, if you haven't been handed out yet, has anybody? You got the handouts. Okay. The book was published in 1885, 1835? Yeah. Anyway, the book. This is the title page of the book. The book is it's published in Warsaw. You can see that at the bottom. It says Warsaw. And if you can't read Yiddish, that's fine. It's also spelled out for you in Russian. Hope that helps. It's called Das Freiliche Herrscheler Ostropolie oder Der Wohlwolle Theaterstück. So, this means, Freilich is word means happy, cheerful. So, happy Herrscheler Ostropolie, or the Wohlwoller Theaterstück. What is this exactly? Well, Theaterstück is a work for theater piece. But what's this Wohlwoll? Never seen that word before. Had trouble finding it in the Yiddish dictionary. My grandfather's name was Isser Velvel. I think, is that the same word? Maybe. Well, Velvel in Yiddish means wolf or little wolf. Is the story about a wolf? No, that didn't make any sense. I finally learned the word Volvo in Yiddish means cheap. This is a book of cheap theater pieces about Herschel Ostropoler. It's actually a collection of short plot summaries that you could make plays out of for very little money, very small casts, or something like that. While we're at it, I'm giving you cool Yiddish words. Want to know another one? Vants. For those who know, it means bedbug. You may hear it a lot on the news lately, but they always pronounce it wrong, so it's hard to tell. Anyway, back to the story. The Yiddish story, Shabbos Nachmu, has three characters. The Isaac Babel version is much more elaborate and makes sense of a story that's a little bit bare bones here. The first two are a Rendler and his wife, the Rendarka. The word Rendler, and it happens that Barney in his talk mentions these people. The Rendler is a leaseholder, somebody who holds a lease on something. In pre-modern Poland and Russia, Jews couldn't own property, but they could own leases on property, on businesses, which gives them the rights to the profit in exchange to a rent they pay to the overlord. So this is a leaseholder and his wife. This particular Rendler was basically a tavern keeper. He had rights to an inn. His wife, Rendarka, as we shall see, was a very wise woman. If you read the translation that I provided, I wrote leaseholder, but I'm going to use Rendler because it's fun to pronounce and I like it. Okay, finally there's our hero, or non-hero, Herschel Ostropoler, who is the archetypal trickster in Yiddish folklore. Herschel was a real person. He lived in the late 18th, early 19th century. He started out as a shochet, but lost his job because he offended too many people, not to mention the cows. He eventually became a sort of court jester to Rav Baruch of Medjugorje, a Hasidic rabbi and the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, who suffered from depression and fits of anger. And Herschel could come by and basically be funny, tell him stories, get him off of his bad moods. Maybe it worked. But anyway, that's consolation for you. Nachamu, nachamu, I mean. After Herschel's death, many stories spread about his tricking and mocking people at all levels of society. So now that you know the background, here's the story of Shabbos Nachmu, as they say, übersetzt und verbessert, translated and improved by me. Shabbos Nachmu. Rendarka heard from her husband that Shabbos Nachmu was coming soon. She imagined that Shabbos Nachmu was a person from the world to come. No sooner was the Rendler out of the house than poor Herschel Ostropoler came into the tavern, and the Rendarka, thinking he was just an ordinary guy, came to him and asked, "Sir, tell me, if Shabbos Nachmu is coming soon?" Has he already been to your house? Ursula, who from the question already figured out what a wise woman, was für a kluge, what kind of wise woman she was, she answered her, what kind of question is that? I am Shabbos Nachmu. Really? So you're Shabbos Nachmu from the world to come? Then tell me, I pray you, Reb Shabbos Nachmu, how are my parents? They're doing terribly, answered Herschel. They are naked and barefoot and have nothing to live on. When the Rendarka heard this, she quickly pulled out all the family's clothes and gave them over to Ursula. She also gave him a little money and told him to give it to her parents in the world to come, and she added a little tip for him. Of course, our Ursula would not refuse such a mission, so he went away with the parcel. As he left the tavern, he thought that to run away with the things was impossible because the husband would be returning home soon and would certainly run after him. Here, our Ursula thought about what to do, and what would you do, after all? He stripped naked, put his clothes into his pack, and hid them away in the forest. And then he came to the edge of the village and stood with both his hands wrapped around a tree. Just what you would do, right? Anybody would think of this. So anyway, the Rendler came home very soon, and when he heard from his wife about the guest, Shabbos Nachmu, he knew immediately there was a swindler in his tavern, and he had to get his belongings back by chasing after him. When he reached the edge of the village, he suddenly saw a naked man holding fast to a tree. He was kind of scared, as you can imagine, but he had the presence of mind to ask him who he was. I am a man from the world to come, he said. That's why I'm naked. And I'm standing here and clinging to this tree with all my strength because the entire world rests upon this tree. And if I let go of it for even an instant, God forbid, the whole world would be destroyed. And really, said the Rendler, as you seem indeed to be a man from heaven, tell me, please, have you not seen a man with a pack full of things running around here? Yes, indeed, I have seen him, said Herschel. He went on another road. He's far away by now, and you won't be able to catch him. Only I can help you. Give me your horse and cart and your clothes, and I will go after him and catch him. But you have to take my place in the meantime. You have to hold the tree with all your strength until I come back to you. But remember, if you let go of the tree for even a second, the whole world will collapse. The Rendler followed his instructions. He got undressed down to his shirt, and Herschel got dressed in his clothes and went away with the horse and cart to that place in the woods where he had left his pack. He loaded his pack onto his cart and went on his way. And the naked Rendler continued to stand, holding onto the tree in the woods. Does this little story mean anything? Is it supposed to? Obviously, it's hardly Torah or Talmud, but there's at least a little allegory here. A Jew takes off his clothes and wraps himself around a tree, and a tree that supports the whole world, no less. As they say in Mama Loshen, in Yiddish, was ist das? As my grandmother would say, this is cuckoo. Well, think about it for a moment. Before my little talk, what was the last thing we did in our Torah service? Well, what did we do? Anybody? Put away the Torah. And what did we say and what did we sing while we were doing it? Eitz Chaim Hi. It is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it. When someone is called to the Torah for an aliyah, that person grasps the handles of the scroll. Not literally embracing it, but holding it with a full loving heart. And what do we call those handles? Atzei Chaim. And not on Tisha B'Av, but on Yom Kippur, do our souls not stand naked before God? Perhaps this is making too much of a trivial story, or perhaps not. I got to say it. My father made speeches occasionally to B'nai B'rith groups and such, and I forget what the context was, but he must have been talking about a bris or something. But he said, let's not make a mountain out of a molehill. It doesn't fit here, but I couldn't wrap. Anyway, to wrap up, the Jews have always found consolation in laughter. There's Torah wisdom to be found everywhere, and you never know what a footnote might turn up. Nachamu, nachamu, ami, comfort ye, my people. On a heartig and good Shabbos.